Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is currently March 7th, 2010, and this is Day 9 Daily number 83. Oh, how's everyone doing today? I'm actually a little bit of a bitter bear because, I don't actually rewatch my own casts because I'm not vain. It's not like I finish my cast and sit back and just like, oh, let me watch me for the next hour. Like, what are you doing on Friday night? Watching me? Not quite that kind of dude. I pretty much just put him in the on-demand and, post links to it, and I'm done with it. Except some people were mentioning audio issues. As it turns out, StarCraft 2 demolishes your audio, right? Like, just the built-in voice chat stuff, it removes the mic boost. It just takes the quality and just, it poops on it to keep it G-rated. And I sounded like I was casting in some sort of giant turbine, right? Like, oh yeah, just leave my mic in a to-go box here on the table. So I think it's okay. I hope. I tested it beforehand, and everyone's like, hey, it sounds great. And then I open up StarCraft, and everyone's like, oh, fix it, it's horrible! Because people get mad instantly on the internet. And rightfully so, because why is it ruining my mic quality? But, enough of that jank. Should be okay now. This is like a test cast to make sure everything's working okay. Let me briefly unmute the chat and just make sure that the microphone is working at all. To make sure just that it's fine. People are saying it sounds good, sounds fine, sounds horrible. You know what? I'll just trust the people who are saying that it's decent, To be honest, I'm not entirely sure how to fix that, but I will investigate it in the future. So, anyways, now onto my little list. I have a little list here of things to go on. For the Day 9 Daily number 80 and 82, there were errors with those. I've re-uploaded them. I'm having an issue, 82 I've re-uploaded, the one where we did Cow Go Moo, and I thought that was a really, really, really good episode. That one, the audio's off sync by about 2 seconds, and I'm having trouble fixing it with the upload, so I might just punt and say, good luck watching it with 2-second delay. 80 I'll have to do over spring break, which will be in about a week, but it'll eventually come up. So in other news, we're actually doing a Day 9 Daily today, instead of talking about all the other things that are going on in the world. Hooray! We're going to be doing some Zerg vs. Terran action today, so I'm pretty excited about that. That's actually a matchup I've been having a little bit of trouble with, so I figured rather than spend my own time researching it, I could just do it in a Day 9 Daily and sort of talk my way through it, and that way people have the opportunity not just to hear my soothing, reassuring voice, has a little bit of rage today, but also to sort of see how I'm thinking about jank, doing stuff. By the way, I need to say, I played Castlevania Symphony of the Night last night again, and the Chrysogrim is so good. Oh, my God, I love that weapon. I literally just flashed with it for hours. Hell of a reference. One thing I did want to say is that I think everyone should get a StarCraft notebook. I just got one. See, here's my StarCraft notebook. I'm going to write everything that I think, that I want to test, that I have tried, little learning tidbits from my replays. And it's actually a sketchbook. It's not lined or ruled at all. It's just blank pages, so I can organize it myself. And I prefer sketchbooks for this sort of thing, just because it's thick, so you can write on both sides without it bleeding through. But so I even use multicolored pens, and I write stuff. If you can see that, I have some of my thoughts here. Use the same convention that I saw in Team Liquid, which is that Terran is blue, Protoss is green, Zerg is red, so I can make little notes and use those colors. So I have a multi-pen. It's 4 pens in one. It was $3. I can't believe I got ripped off that hard. But yeah, just for instance, I have here Terran. Here's an idea that I had, is that you open with an early push where none of your buildings have any reactors on them. When the push either, the initial push is intended to win or get some sort of huge advantage. But supposing it doesn't, there's going to be a period where you pull back to defend. Only add on the reactors once you have the expo running, so that way you have a second timing push after your first push. And I said maybe as a rule, only one reactor core if you're on one base. That's just a thought there. But now I have something to think about, because in a game I was actually testing getting the reactor core really early on against a Protoss player, but he pretty much just attacked me early on, and I didn't really have enough units. I'd only just finished my first 2 Marines, so I was having trouble with that. So the basic thought was, well, when is it okay to get a reactor core? When is it bad to have a barracks there and opt for the reactor core instead of just building Marines right there for defense? And my thought was, well, when you're expanding, you generally kind of turtle up and you want to be defensive and that sort of thing. So rather than just expand, make some stuff, and then just get reactor cores. Why not do an early push? You get all the buildings out of the way that you need. You'll have multiple barracks. You'll have maybe a factory or a starport in there. So you do a big push with that, and then when you pull back to defend, instead of having to build an extra barrack and then get the reactor core on that, I just throw down 2 reactor cores on the 2 barracks I already had from the push, and then build up a little bit, and then I have a really strong timing push after that. Seems like a pretty cool idea, and it's in my StarCraft notebook. And that's the sort of thought that I would have had in passing, just sort of musing, you know, on my very well-massaged chin here, just, oh, in a coffee shop. And then it would have been totally out of my brain once I remembered that I have a huge assignment due at noon tomorrow, which actually happened right before the cast, so not a good feeling. But now my break is done. We're going to go ahead and check out some cool Terran vs. Zerg replays. The first one I wanted to look at was a Brat OK game. I actually opened it up. There it is. Yeah. Yes, I wish to go back into the previous version. So again, if the audio quality is a little low, sincerely apologize. I'm going to investigate after this cast. But I assure you, it is StarCraft 2 doing it to me. Because this mic is super high quality. My mom knows how much I love talking, so she just bought me a microphone for my birthday. This was actually before I did podcasts. You know, she was like, "Oh, no, Sean, you should talk more. You should talk into a mic." She's like super encouraging, so she got me a microphone, and here I am talking my little heart out. I'm hoping my Brood War didn't crash. Excuse me, my StarCraft 2 didn't crash. It may have crashed. It may have just crashed, because you know what? Today's Sunday, which means that Monday's right around the corner, and Monday's bleeding into today. All right, so it did crash. So I'm going to go ahead and reboot StarCraft 2. Let's go ahead and close this process. Yeah, it's fantastic. And this replay should work, because I even tested it beforehand. But you know what? It is Sunday, so such is life. But just to recap again, while we're getting StarCraft 2 loaded up once again, the whole goal of this is to look at a bunch of different openings that can happen in Zerg vs. Terran, and then we're going to look at a game blind. It's actually a game played by Jinro, who's known as Frozen Arbiter on the TeamLiquid.net forums, or John, if you prefer real-life names, but we're on the internet, so we like to be cool. So here we are, reopening the game. So first one we're going to be looking at is a game between Brat OK and someone named Pracky or Prachi. Don't know exactly how it's supposed to be pronounced. But it seems like a pretty standard-ish Zerg vs. Terran. There's some very normal-looking things that go on. So we have a benchmark just to sort of begin with. So here we are. We are currently watching a game of StarCraft 2. Hooray! Delicious coffee keeping me going. So here they are. Here's Brat OK spawning as the red Terran on the bottom, and the Zerg player Prachi spawning as the blue Zergies on top. So I'm going to go ahead and briefly close another window over here. There we go. All right, fantastic. Man, my upbound is so high. It's going at 700 kilobits per second, man. This is like ultra streaming going on right now. Maybe I should have set that to a non-variable bitrate. But either way, things are going great, right? So let's go ahead and speed things up. Now, on a map like Lost Temple, I don't mind doing a expand before pool. I think that's fine. There's a lot of people who've been pretty much opting to like 15 pool every single game to get an early queen. So that way they can sort of swing forward with the macro. That's something that I would want to test, and therefore I've written it in my StarCraft notebook. So, for instance, what I would test in my StarCraft notebook is, okay, spawning pool on 15, and then I would set an arbitrary time like 5 minutes or something like that, and I have X food, you know, or something like that. And then if I do a 2-hatch opening, how much food do I have at that same point in time? And if it's less or more, then I suddenly know things. For instance, in the 2-gate cast, where I did 2-gate aggression against Zerg, I did that in the replay. I timed it out, and I noticed that the first set of larvae pop right off the hatch from the first queen, right when I have about 5 zealots at the ramp. Very useful timing to have. And note, okay, this is one thing. Note that that cannot be discovered just by looking at the little replay analysis bar that's at the end of games. A lot of people think that if they just go to click on that build order thing, it gives them all the information that they ever need. But of course, the really useful stuff is based on the position of your units relative to what he's building. Zerg vs. Zerg in StarCraft 1, when my Overlord moves this far across the map, I know that his spire is done. That sort of thing. We like knowing that sort of information. Whoopsie daisies, my computer's freaking out. Fantastic. Moving right along, so here comes the queen pooping out. So the basic theme that I've seen a lot of Zerg players do, and I actually do it sort of naively, really, it just seems to work, and I should probably think a little bit more about why, is to open up early expand, get a whole bunch of workers and that sort of thing, because really the Terran can't do much with those first Marines, especially if they're cross-map. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Banelings and a layer. I'm going to use Zergling Baneling to keep me alive until I get hydralisks. And then I'm going to go Hydras in the mid-game. And once I get Hive, I'm going to go to ultralisks. I'm pretty confident in the Zergling Baneling into hydralisk opening. I'm not so certain if the ultralisk follow-through is good or not, but I'm not going to worry about that. I will find out whether it's good or not by playing a lot. So here's the first thing that I'm aware of from watching this replay. The Zerg's doing, you know, a usual sort of powering thing. Look, there's the Baneling nest going down, his layers going up. This is a pretty normal looking little opening by the Terran. He's not going to be doing any sort of huge harass rush. He's going to be doing a somewhat early push, where he just takes some Marines and some Hellions and goes ahead and attacks. And I've seen this switcheroo go on quite a bit, where they use the tech lab at the factory to get this upgrade for the Hellions that gives them extra damage versus light. And then they swap locations and get the reactors so they can get a lot of Hellions. And then they come back at the barracks with the tech lab and get Marauders. Very, very nice little opening. We'll actually see me do it in a second, slightly differently. But this is more used for like a push, for an actual attack, as opposed to a rush, which is intended, you know, to screw around with someone, do a little bit of harassment. So here are the Banelings about to pop up. We're going to see them do a pretty decent job here, trying to micro the Hellions, but of course a few little glitches going on. One thing that I've actually been thinking a little bit about is whether or not 2 queens early on you can actually support, because I've noticed at the rate I get buildings and tech, I don't quite have enough money. So it might mean that I'm teching too quickly and getting those buildings too quickly, and I should actually hold back and not invest in a second queen quite so early on. Or excuse me, that I should invest in a queen early on, and instead of spending all that money on those ultra-fast buildings, I should spend it on the larvae to just get more stuff. Now, I'd prefer to see hydralisks a little bit sooner. Here's some of the money issues I was talking about. Notice that this Zerg player is doing reasonable things. The Zerg's getting this, if I can click on it. God, can I click on it? Am I going to have to? There we go. He's getting a spine crawler in his main. That's actually kind of an issue if it's that hard for me to click on it. Oh, no, it's actually easy for me to click on it. Huh. As it turns out, I'm just awful. All right, that makes sense to me. Anyways, Zerg seems to be doing things that are fairly normal. You know, as this spine crawler here to deal with any sort of Hellion drop, because again, he saw that this was walled in and knew that there was no attack that had come down yet, so the Terran could be up to something. Also getting another spine crawler here to defend from any sort of Hellion runaround. But with this layer up so fast, I'm not seeing anything that is taking advantage of the layer. If you go for some sort of early building, make sure you're making use of that. I mean, that's a pretty classic symptom you see in StarCraft 1, where people will invest in getting, you know, a factory early on, and then they'll get harassed a little bit, and they will make absolutely no use of that factory. It will literally be impossible for them to find any means of using it. And that makes me feel like, well, if it's so easy to screw with you if you get a fast factory, why are you getting a fast factory? You know, so I have a little bit of the same opinion here, fast layer, but still the overall same tech is there. So notice how I'm taking this pattern of Zergling Baneling and thinking, how can we refine this? Because really, true StarCraft strategy is not doing things like, oh, well, you know, if he does this deviation, I'll switch into this completely wild, different direction. If he does this, I'm going to go in this totally nutty direction too. Instead, it's about doing basically the same thing against similar openings of your opponent, and just sort of sculpting it, just carefully shaving off little bits or adding stuff here and there, so that way you can have a truly, really, really strong, unstoppable build. And so I'm liking this Hellion stuff, because first of all, it's putting a ton of pressure on the opponent, and then Terran's getting this expansion up. But again, I want to keep this point of view just a little bit from the Zerg. Just ever so slightly more skewed toward the Zerg player's understanding of things. So getting this Evo chamber here, and hey, there's the Hydralisk Den coming out. You know, we have 4 more replays to go, so I should probably speed this up a little bit. But, you know, we have these early evolution chambers getting an early carapace upgrade and an early melee attack upgrade. This is actually very similar to how I play this. The idea is that the Hydralisks are going to keep us alive in the mid-game, but we want to get these melee attacks up, so that way we can end up having a big ultralisk transition in the end. So ideally what I would actually have done is taken out this and expanded there, or have expanded here. And I say ideally because, you know, as we're seeing, Terran's putting a lot of pressure on. And we're seeing that switcheroo, right? getting the Marauders out from trading reactor, or trading the reactor for the factory. You know, we're now getting Marauders out of here, and now we're getting some extra barracks and all that sort of cool stuff. So continuing to push with Marauders. Really cool aggression going on by the Terran player. And what I like so much about this is that Marines and Marauders, I think everyone knows, are just good. But also the Hellions do so much damage versus light that it seems like it would be strong against some sort of Zergling, Baneling combination. And that's actually, notice how much trouble the Zerg's been having, and oh, when the hydralisks get up, what a breath of fresh air, right? Whew, alright, thank God, we are through with that. Alright, hooray. And, you know, I'm going to play through the rest of this fairly quickly, but the thing that I think is important to notice right now. Oh, also, see, look how good that is, sending this guy to the Xel'Naga Watchtower while he's killing this. Super, super good. Anyways, the thing that I'm noticing here is that Zergling Baneling seems pretty good, like a nice little opening transition, was having quite a bit of struggle against this mass Hellion composition. But once the Hydras are up, Zerg seems to have a big advantage in the mid-game. That's the big thing I'm noticing, this Hydralisk advantage in the mid-game against seemingly normal Terran openings. Any combination of Marine Marauders and Hellions seems defeatable with Hydralisks. Now we're getting the Infestation Pit. Looks like we're not quite getting a layer yet. Again, be very careful about getting these buildings so early if you're not quite making use of them. Just because you can take that money and spend it elsewhere, such as on expanding. Uh-oh. Oh, blocked. So we actually don't have that many Hydralisks, but I'm hoping we see a confrontation here in a minute. Lots of really awesome aggression by the Terran. These Hellions are just allowing all that. And look at this. Ooh, Banelings. The Baneling Hydra combination is so strong. It's so strong. I love it, right? Look at that. There were probably 6 or 7 Hydralisks beforehand, and there's 4 left over after a huge battle. That's marvelous. So it seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, got the range upgrades, so now Hydras have the 6 range instead of the 5 beforehand. Getting a decent amount of Banelings. And what's so cool about this transition, and actually before I go into what's cool about the transition, let's briefly touch on transitions themselves. You just want each part of your build to flow in nicely to one another. Just have a good connecting tidbits going on there. So if we open up with Zerglings and Banelings, it means that once we get the Hydralisks up, all those leftover Zerglings, we can morph all of them to Banelings. Because in the early game, we needed the Zerglings to be, you know, just the sort of meat units, or the muscle units, I call them. The big part of the army that just deals a little bit of damage, and the Banelings are the support units. But now we have Hydralisks as the meat unit of our army, and we can have the Banelings still be support units. So we just have all those Zerglings, which have lost utility, because we're in the mid-game and there's too many Hellions. We just turn them all into Banelings, feeling great about ourselves. And then we have all these upgrades for the Zerglings and the Banelings being researched, right? You know, we have these Carapace upgrades level 2. We already have the Baneling upgrade, which, as we see, makes it do a lot more damage against pretty much everything, really, but especially against those light units. And then we can transition into ultralisks. And if we have those upgrades from Zerglings at the start of the game, once we get the Adrenal upgrade for Zerglings, now all of a sudden they're useful in the late game. And Hydralisks sort of start to lose their ability to be really strong in these late game stages because we haven't really gotten upgrades for them. They're just nice in this little tiny window in the mid game for really pushing Terran back and opening up our ability to expand. Herpty-derpty-der, coming around. Loving this army composition. This is one thing that I actually have not been doing in this matchup, which is getting a lot of Hellions. I'm going to go ahead and speed it up a little bit here. You know, getting some tanks as well. Noticing not many Ravens. All the gas is pretty much being spent on all these support units. Terran was really responsible about killing this off. And if we go back into the Zerg's main, he has just gotten a hive and is getting Ultralisks. Look at this great transition. This is like literally exactly what my plan is in this matchup. And look, going back and getting the Zerglings now. A lot of people confuse the order of things when they see, oh look, a lot of Hydralisks, a lot of Zerglings. And they get even numbers. They get like a 50-50 split all game long. It's super important to note that it's a lot of Hydralisks at first, and then a lot of Zerglings to free up gas for Ultralisks. And, you know, pretty much stalemate-ish type stuff. Well, not stalemate, just sort of hanging out, really. Some Hellion drops going on, but we're going to go ahead and speed this up because it's really just the main sort of basics of this matchup that I think get established in this game that I want to focus on. Big army sort of waltzing around. You know, a little bit passive, but of course you don't really know how to be aggressive in this game yet because it's only been out for like, what, 2 weeks? 3 weeks? I don't know. I have a lot of work I do. Kind of losing track of the time on things. So here's a nice little confrontation. This is an awful angle for Zerg, I just want to say. Look, big concave from Terran right here. Huge concave. Little tiny concave for Zerg. But still going in, and these Banelings are awesome. Look at them just rolling through everything. Oh my god, that's so cool. You know, it almost makes me think I shouldn't get so many ultralisks. I do need to incorporate quite a few Banelings into that late game army, just because my opponent's almost inevitably going to have a lot of Marines. And here comes the ultralisks. And they should almost have that chitinous plating on. I almost always recommend getting the armor before the speed. I really don't think it's a good idea to get that speed first, unless you super know what you're doing. But I mean, I pretty much have never ever gotten speed first ever. And then the ultralisks, you know, are awesome, speeding things up a little bit. And the ultralisks, this is the unit that lets you get the win, right? Their purpose in this game is to just be beasts that allow you to attack. And notice that it's pretty late in the game. It's about 20 minutes in, and Zerg really hasn't done any aggression. That's also important for these standards we've established, right? Even though hydralisks and banelings are a nice little combination that can hold off a lot of cool stuff, or pretty much a big variety of stuff that Terran could throw at you, that doesn't mean you should be taking the hydralisks and the banelings and trying to kill the Terran early on. That hydralisk is a transitional unit. It's the unit that lets you stay alive because it's really strong and can do a decent amount of damage, but it basically keeps you in a good spot so you can get ultralisks in the late game, and the ultralisks are going to let you kill the opponent. To make the analogy back to StarCraft 1, in Zerg vs. Terran, you use the mutilisks and Zerglings and lurkers in the mid-game to sort of hold back and make sure the Terran doesn't kill you, but then when you get defilers, that's when you can push back. When you get ultralisks, that's when you can push back. So make sure you know what the purpose of all your units are from start to finish. And just to sort of wrap things up, basically the Zerg attacks and ultralisks are awesome. So Peter, and there's a Thor, which is awesome because Thors are awesome. But, you know, to no avail. Look how fast ultras kill buildings. They just headbutt them. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and leave the game and come right back here. So to recap, hopefully in 2 sentences, because I'm not very good at being short-winded. The Zerg seems to go Zergling Baneling into Hydralisk into Ultralisk, or some sort of late game plan. That seems pretty nifty. With that in mind, we want to start thinking as Zerg, since that seems to be pretty normal for now. Again, we're 3 weeks into the beta, so still the beta. What was the second game I wanted to watch? It was Me vs. a Dude. Alright, cool. Where is Me vs. the Dude? Ah, there it is. This is a game I played on Steps of War. I random Terran, and my opponent was Zerg. Actually, just played this one last night. And we're going to see some things that we're noticing in this game by this Zerg player, Sohu Fuju, and here's me, day 9. So he says good luck, and I tell him I'm Terran because I'm playing random because I want to play all 3 races, but I don't want some sort of BS win, you know, where he feels like he has to 8-pool or something because he doesn't know who I am. I want to make sure that I'm playing against a reasonable strategy for this race. And what we end up seeing is that he early expands here. And we're not actually going to watch all of this game because we've been going for about 23 minutes and we still have 3 replays to go. So he early expands here. Now I want to briefly say what my goal is. This is part of the opening strategy I have. I'm going to open up with a very fast factory, and then what I'm going to do is make a reactor out of the barracks, and then immediately lift the factory and take the reactor and move the barracks over and make a tech lab. So that way I can do a double Hellion rush. I see a bunker rush and I think, why not? Let's see how it feels in my strategy. And this is sort of a funky spot for me to be in because I'm realizing now I need to stop making Marines out of this barracks because I eventually need to get a reactor. There it is. So I'm kind of sacrificing my bunker rush. So I'm kind of thinking, well, you know, the point of my build is not to see if I can kill him early on with a bunker rush. You know, I just want to make sure that I can actually pull off this strategy. So perhaps it's a blunder for me to be bunker rushing early on, but, you know, Steps of War, super small map. What we're seeing this Zerg player do, so this is, again, from the Zerg point of view, he actually got his pool super late at like 15 or 16 after he made his hatch first. And look at this great hold, right? I'm thinking I'm gold, right? I'm like thinking I got this. And watch this push. This is so great. So Queen pops out. He builds it at the other hatchery, moves this spine crawler that he built earlier on, which, you know, I may have been able to kill, but I still think it's significant to note that he was able to kill it off relatively easily. So here I am. I have the reactor there. So I accidentally pulled a guy off the supply depot. I thought it finished, but because in StarCraft 1 you have to tell the worker you're no longer building on the supply depot. Here you just box it and move them away. So whoopsie daisies. So we're going to see some nice things go on by this Zerg player that I liked a lot. So he gets a Roach Warren early on, and part of me, if I was watching this game maybe a week ago, I would have looked at this and gone, ugh, typical Zerg player, just opening roaches because he thinks it's the best unit. I don't quite talk like that, but, you know, basically the idea is, you know, why go roaches, man? Come on. But right here I'm noticing, oh, this is actually a really good transition for Zerg, because we're not actually going to see that many roaches come out of this Zerg player early on. He's mainly making drones and using these roaches to block the ramp. Because if I have Hellions coming, my Hellions are going to be able to break this ramp with just Zerglings super easily. So look how easily I'm repelled. Keeping this Queen over on the left side to block any Hellions from getting up here. I could probably have snuck around here, but but I'm horrible, so I'm backing off. And then, you know, I'm transitioning into a pretty normal-looking Medic Marine army. I should be expanding kind of here soon. And I steal this reactor here from this place. And I'm getting 3 barracks now because, there's a period of time where I'm getting add-ons for my barracks. So I end up stockpiling a little bit of money, and I can expand. If you saw the Cow Go Moo Day 9 Daily, that was number 82 that I'm going to re-upload in a little bit. Actually, it is re-uploaded. It's just the audio's off sync. In that game, I'm literally stealing the exact build I saw him do and butchering it quite a bit. So I'm continuing to do everything, and we're going to see Zerg look tech towards the layer relatively quickly, and now he's getting the Hydralisk Den. He's getting burrow for the roaches, but still, there's really not that many roaches. It's really primarily this push towards Hydralisks in the mid-game. And I'm going to speed things up a little bit. This game isn't too noteworthy past this point, but I think it's real cool to see how there's a variety of different openings I need to be worried about as Zerg. You know, bunker rushes, which I did, Hellion rushes, which I also did in this game, just standard sorts of Hellion pushes, like what we saw in the previous game. And if we just look at what this Zerg player did, this opening deals with a lot of those pretty damn well, right? So we got the spine crawlers up nearby the ramp to help with the Hellion pushes. These roaches here really just to block the ramp and to maybe deal with some extra stuff, support the spine crawlers if I was doing any sort of marine push. So for instance, in the previous game we saw Brat OK use a bunch of Hellions and Marines to attack this front early on. This composition I think would be able to hold it off relatively nicely. And we're still getting a Hydralisk Den pretty damn fast. So that way we can deal with any sort of air, we can deal with drops, we can deal with more pushes that are going on, and this allows us to continue with a mid-game plan that uses Hydralisks as that unit to sort of keep us alive. And in this game we're also noticing just 1 Queen instead of 2, and the Zerg seems able to keep his money pretty low. Come on, Zerg, prove me right. Okay, well, you know, almost right. Yeah, and I feel like these Hydralisks can also be used to knock this thing down, and we can be taking this a little bit earlier because we have our Hydralisks to protect us. Also, you know, the roaches, whoopsie daisies, the roaches are a pretty good late game unit. So if we can get this up and get a handful of upgrades, like this movement speed upgrade, so that way when we get Hive, we can get the roaches later on. Get the fast regeneration upgrade for the roaches. And I'm pretty much just going Marine Marauder early on. I got 2 tech labs early on, so I can get a lot of Marauders because I was worried about roach push. But again, look at this. These roaches were just really could have just be used as a transitionary unit to get Hydralisks, which I think is super, super awesome. I like that a lot. And we're going to go ahead and stop this game in just a little bit. I just wanted to point out that I built my reactor here, feeling very clever, and Marines actually pop out right here and get walled in. So, yeah, there we go. That's a little bit of a whoopsie-doopsie daisies. But of course, once I don't need the Marauders anymore, I sneak a tech lab in there and make Ravens. Come on, make Ravens so I don't make myself look bad. If I could just make a Raven here. Come on, make a Raven. Well, at some point in this game, I get around to making a Raven. There we go. Thank you, Sean. Any sort of expanding away. And also getting the Hive up. a few adjustments we can think about, maybe getting an evolution chamber to help with the transition. Instead, he's just getting the Spire and going for some sort of late game with Brood Lords. But all in all, I think that's a really awesome transition that he did. And of course, I'll leave it as a mystery as to whether or not I won that game. The next game we're actually going to see is not a mystery at all. This is more about some of the openings that we can actually do. This is a very embarrassing loss that I suffered on Oasis. And I even made an ass out of myself in the game, so you guys get to have some fun laughing at me. I know I sure have fun doing that. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about psychology after this game, like dealing with losses. But for now, let's just go ahead and stick to the usual plan, which is openings for Zerg. So he's going to be doing something different. So he waited actually a while to say hi. Oh no, this isn't this game. I remember there was one person who just was completely confused when I said I'm Terran, and he was like, what? He was like mad about it. He was like, what? And I was like, well, I just I want you to know, so that way I can practice the actual matchup instead of you versus random. So here, he's getting the pool early on, hot sauce. He's getting his pool early on, but it's Desert Oasis. Do we really like doing an opening that involves us, early expanding? Because this expansion itself, look, it's basically out in the open. There's really no choke for this expansion. Really, you need a lot of stuff here, and you need to be blocking your ramp, and you need to be some way to defend this expansion from the left. It's just sort of a pain. So I saw this opening, which seems like a really fancy, sweet opening for this map in particular. He's basically going to mutalisk rush me. Now, this happened right after the cast I did of Cow Go Moo. So I was super excited to do the same build we actually saw me do in the previous game, which is to do a Hellion Rush to get this thing's reactor up early. I forget an orbital command just because, I forgot it. Because whenever I'm trying a new build, this is the first time I've ever done this build against Zerg, so, it was really clunky. So here we go. He's getting the layer and vomiting things on, so this is cool. And we're going to see me just butcher everything pretty hard. But again, I want to focus a little bit on the Zerg opening. So here I am. I'm feeling very clever. Again, notice that's very similar to what I did last game. Getting the double Hellions up. I'm getting my Marauders up, feeling fancy. Pretty good at my money low. Look how fast he's already getting a Spire up. Look, my 2 Hellions have just left my base. I'm thinking I'm rushing him right now, right? But he is just super, 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 super far ahead of me. And, this is part of the reason why you shouldn't do cutesy rush builds on a map where it takes like an hour and a half to get from base to base. So he's continuing just to, vomit on the things right here. He has a good amount of Zerglings just to deal with stuff. He's getting a Spine Crawler, playing very defensively. And again, the idea behind his play, it's okay to make this Spine Crawler and these extra Zerglings because all you need to do is stay alive from any push. If he didn't see me Hellion pushing, it might be a little bit of a waste to do this. But since he does see me trying to be aggressive early on, I'm investing money by getting this so quickly. So it's okay for him to invest in money defending it. And what we actually end up seeing is he gets a whole bunch of things out. He's being very good about continuing to vomit regularly for new larvae. And the Spire is going to come up, so I'm trying to be cute and harass, but I actually saw the Spire, and I literally got really flustered right here. Because, okay, so, yeah, I guess I'll talk about that right now. So, I've been playing StarCraft 1 for 12 years. For about the last 5-6 years, you just can't surprise me. Not because I'm some genius, but just because I've played, I'd already played 10,000 games of StarCraft by then, right? There is only so much stuff that people can do until you're aware of the sorts of things you need to worry about. And of course, there's ways to adjust the timings and everything, but never in StarCraft 1 does a player get Wraiths into my main, and I'll go, oh yeah, Wraiths, right? Like, I'm not used to just not being aware of stuff, right? So in this game, I see a Spire, and I'm just like, oh my god, air! And I literally, I forgot that turrets existed. Okay, that's how flustered I got. I was like, I need to get Vikings. It's like all I could think. I made no Marines, I made no turrets. I was just like, Vikings are the only way I'm gonna win. So that's okay if that happens. I'm gonna come back to this a little bit, but I'm like super flustered. So I'm just like, I'm doing this classic newbie mistake, right, which is to just suicide in with everything. Well, I want to point out something about the Zerg's money. Notice how the Zerg is slowly getting more minerals. If you did some sort of mutalisk rush like this, where you end up getting 5, 6, 7 mutalisks, it'll pin me back, and it makes it safe for you then to get an expansion as Zerg. And in the meantime, you can throw down a hydralisk den, because that's that mid-game unit, right? You can throw down a hydra den here, and just pump out drones, and with the extra gas, you can just get an upgrade for the hydralisks. This mutalisk opening seems super well suited to this map, and it will allow me to transition into that hydralisk mid-game that I was seeing beforehand. And notice how this opening is also dealing with a lot of the rushes, you know. I obviously can't bunker rush because there's nothing to bunker rush, and it's cross-map. The Hellion rush that I was doing, he was able to defend with a spine crawler and the Zerglings. If I was trying to do some sort of really cute push like we saw Brat OK do in Game 1 today, I mean, this would have held it off just fine. And these mutalisks are pretty damn fast, so anything later than that would need to have a lot of Marines just to be able to puncture a hole in the defense. I dislike a little bit that he's making so many Zerglings right now. These actually would be better suited as drone for that transition there. But, you know, I like this a lot. Right, so then I'm just like, like still sending aliens in. These guys are just hanging out. I'm freaking out here. I'm like trying to get a starport up. I'm trying to make 2 starports because again I forgot that I could get turrets. So I'm just like, complete state of disarray. Look, I have like 118 food on my orbital command, and then I'm like, turrets. Oh yeah, all right, come on, engineering bay. I'm hoping it's like Warcraft 3 with humans, where I can just like repair it into construction. Oh god. So then he comes in. Okay, now don't do this. Don't do this because it just makes it sting all the worse. Oh yeah, I'm trying to do something here. This is just embarrassing. So I'm just like, attack. Go for it, guys. And of course it ends up failing miserably. And he comes over here and he kills my Viking. I've already forgotten that this starport even exists. So then look, I'm like, LOL, okay, GG. I'm like trying to explain myself. Okay, watch me explain myself. Are you ready, guys? I said somehow mutalisks never occurred to me. Which is true. I put a little happy face on there because again I'm like super flustered. Then I forgot the turrets exist. Not so good. Good game. And he's not even responding to me. He's probably thinking, who is this complete newbie, right? So I do want to talk about the flusteredness just a little bit. It's okay to get flustered, right? I've played strategy games competitively for years, and this still flustered me. And it's just because I didn't expect it as one of the possible openings of the player. And that's why I specifically chose this game, because it shows you how easy it is to lose if you're not actually aware of all the different possibilities that are there. At the same time, Zerg shouldn't be thinking, oh yeah, all I do is do an easy win with mutalisks. There's so much potential with this build to get the mutalisks early on, but then to go straight into an expansion into hydralisks and get everything going just the same there. There's a lot of cool stuff that can come out of seeing that sort of game. And you know, if you get flustered, just say good game. Okay, and I was actually pissed about that game. I was like, how did I forget turrets? Oh my god, I was like super bummed out. And this is what you should do. Take a break, just go somewhere and just be mad, okay? Don't think to yourself, that guy sucks, I'm better than him. Don't even think about the game, just go somewhere and feel just the emotion. Just being mad, okay? And then once you're done with it, because you didn't tie it to him, because you didn't say, I hate that guy, because you didn't say, I suck, I'm awful, you didn't attach it to your own play in the game. It was just anger that came and went. It was just the pure emotion. I literally could give you a pill that would make you feel the exact same way. So I wait for that chemical emotion to go away, and then I come back and make fun of myself, and I can very clearly see what's right and wrong about it. But I don't think it's ever... You should never be saying to yourself, I'm not going to get mad. It's just a game. Of course you're going to get mad. It's like really, it's an incredibly intense game. There's like so much adrenaline. There's so much focus. It's so easy to screw up. So easy to hate on yourself for little mistakes. But don't do that. Just be mad, and once it goes away, then come back and be critical of yourself. Take breaks when being critical with yourself. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the last game before we watch the random game. It's a game between King Hillbilly and Team EG, where King Hillbilly showcases a completely nutty, wacko, insane strategy that I haven't really seen anyone else use. I was actually watching a stream the other day and I saw him do something similar, where he's going to be getting a bunch of Infestors, which seems a little weird to be massing that unit as the goal. But here we are, moving right along. So we have the Terran player here. So we're going to think a little bit about the same mid-games and all the sorts of openings that we've seen so far, right? And I even mentioned openings like, whoopsie daisy, that's my Gmail. We haven't even mentioned all the different openings that could be going on, like drops or that sort of thing, but, you know, we can kind of see how this hydralisk mid-game, after some ling-bangling early on just to keep us alive, how that can hold off a lot of early rushes with Marines, as well as a lot of those cutesy stuff that could go on. So right now, the Zerg needs to be aware of Hellions, needs to be aware of some sort of bunker rush, scouting to the side right here, which means that he's going to have a little bit of trouble seeing a bunker rush if it's en route, but it means that his Overlord's also going to stay alive, and getting a pool relatively late. I mean, I guess it's not late for this game. In StarCraft 1, we would call that a very late pool. Oh my goodness. And also make sure you get your Overlord right about now, because it's very easy to forget to do that. Yeah, here comes the Overlord, and then blah, it pops up. So, uh-oh, here's a bunker rush. Now, when you see a bunker rush coming, first of all, I like this placement a little bit. I might even skew this Overlord a little bit more here, or even something like right here, so that way you can see it coming, but you can always retreat to higher ground. But doing the usual thing, pulling some drones off. The Terran's already getting an orbital command. He's muling away. So this is what we were mentioning earlier. You need to be aware of a way to stop that. Uh-oh, accidentally lost the spine crawler. So what we're going to see is King Hillbilly actually pulls all his drones off, and I'm not so sure I'm a fan of that. What I would have preferred is taking everything off except some small number of drones. In StarCraft 1, it would be about 4 drones is fine to leave behind, and you take 9 drones to the front. But you really do need 8, 9 drones to prevent this from getting up in the first place. And just a few tips for bunker rushes that worked in StarCraft 1, and also in my tests, it works decently well in StarCraft 2. If you bring 6 or 7 workers, you can actually just attack the bunker and kill that off. Most players try to kill the SCV there, they try to kill the Marine that's coming, but a lot of people forget to just be able to attack the bunker. You can kill it faster than it builds if you have 5 or 6 workers there. You know, and if you bring 7 or 8 just for insurance, you know, you can definitely be wailing on that thing, take it down early on. And then, you know, the Marine will arrive, and then your Zerglings will be up, so, you know, no big deal. And in the meanwhile, it looks like King Hillbilly canceled his Queen, so he doesn't actually have that Queen option. So we're feeling a little bit nervous as King Hillbilly right now, because we don't have our Queen up, we don't have the macro we want up. I'm actually going to be going back and forth between these 2 hashes, seeing when we actually do have the money to get the Queen. We need to be aware of little run-by attacks. Some people might say this is bad placement. Some people might say, well, why not build it here so you can defend your ramp? Notice this placement hits anything trying to sneak along the right side for a pretty damn long time. And if he was trying to sneak anything around this left side, these Zerglings can come up, block the ramp, and this thing can just hit right at the base of the ramp. So that's pretty good. But still, yeah, look, blocking the ramp. Still feeling a little bit like we're going to need a second one of these things. And oh my goodness, what is King Hillbilly going to transition to? Look, this double factory thing, a lot of Hellions. Hellions people are just loving early on because they're very mobile. And if you get this upgrade, they just demolish Zerglings and drones, so they become super, super, super dangerous. They're actually one of my favorite units in StarCraft 2. Oopsie daisies for getting a supply depot. But, you know, this is one of those parts where I don't know if it's bad or good to use the extra supply feature of the command center just to go down here, so that way I can still be constantly producing out of these 2 things. So I would write it down in my StarCraft notebook, which again I'll point out at the end of the cast. Yeah, I have a StarCraft notebook where I write everything down, and if I had an idea like that, I would say, hey, if I'm doing some sort of early Hellion push, maybe I should just use the extra supplies so I can get the push out earlier. Maybe that's good, maybe that's not, but it's just a thought. And as we can see, a ton of spine crawlers here, and look at this! Look at how easy it was to get up there. Oh my goodness. Okay, so when you see this, it's super important not to just go, oh, cool, he got up his ramp, herp-de-dur. You know, you want to do just a little bit more, make a connection to one of the other games that you've seen. Notice that in the game that I played against the Zerg player here, the Zerg got roaches early on and just got 3 or 4 roaches, and he blocked his ramp. Very clearly I see here that if there were any roaches here, none of these Hellions would have gotten up. If I try to rely on Lings too heavily early on, he can just blow right up my ramp, no problem. So I could get roaches early on. I could try to put a building here. I could try to, throw a creep tumor here and then build a structure right here so he actually can't even get around to the ramp without taking a ton of hits. So then look at this. Look at how much damage these Hellions do. This is just brutal, brutal damage. Terrible, terrible damage. And of course, my question for Terran is, what's your transition? You obviously can't just kill him with just Hellions, so it's a little dangerous to just keep massing Hellions. I might do something like lift this off and trade with this barracks right here, so that way I'd have 2 add-ons for my factories, and I could go like Marine Thor or something like that. I have no idea if it's good, but just a thought. Yeah, and see, look, we're starting to see some of the same similarities in the Zerg. Just trying to get those Banelings early on so we can hold off some sort of push from the Terran pieces. I'm going to speed this up because we have yet one more game to do after this. So, of course, this Day 9 Daily is going to go just a touch long today, which hopefully no one's going to complain about. Things look pretty normal here in the Terran base. So I'm going to continue to focus here on the Zerg pieces. Remaking a pool, remaking a Baneling less, has a Spire up. Just to get some mutas to kill this stuff off. It's hard to tell whether or not these mutilisks were an intentional component of the strategy that King Hillbilly had planned, but they're definitely going to help with these Hellions. Have some nice flavored iced tea. The mutilisks come in here and they don't really look like they're going to do too much direct damage. They're not going to kill some stuff off necessarily, but it forced all these turrets to get made. That's a lot of money that the Terran just spent. Oh yeah, look at how many turrets there are. Jesus, that's a lot of turrets. Be a little careful if you're Terran with this sort of reaction, because you've pinned your Zerg just to 1 base worth of gas. That's not really very much gas. So, ooh, look, an infestation pit for the lair. All right, looks like Terran's finally, Zerg finally starting to stabilize, and we're going to see this absolutely nuts strategy go on by the Zerg player, which is actually so fancy it makes me want to try it. Going mass Infestor. Now the Infestor, as we'll be able to see right here, I could just pause it right here. It costs 100, 150, so it's mainly gas. The question is, what do we spend the minerals on? Could be on expanding, could it be on defenses and expanding? These are sorts of things that we like to consider. All right, Thors. All right, I approve of pretty much any strategy that involves a lot of Thors. So, just making drones. We're going to see this mass Infestor thing. Now, this is sort of weird, but all the abilities that Infestors have are super, super good. Infested Terrans are just basically tank units, right? They're just there to take damage. We have neural parasites, so we can mind control Thors, we can mind control medevacs, key air units, and we have fungal growth, which is basically like a mini plague that causes units to stop moving. So we have some Hellions dashing about. Yeah, Terran's pretty much going for Marine Thor, which is again totally kick ass. But look at this. It's this weird mix of just corruptors that are eventually going to be morphed into brood lords and these infestors. So hey, cool, we have a completely different mid-game to think about. And killing, whoopsie daisies, just reround when I meant to click right here. And Terran started killing the stuff off. Going to be breezing through this replay a little bit faster here. But what I really, really love about this is it's different mid-game, right? Before we were thinking all about like hydralisks and banelings and all that sort of stuff, and all the ways we need to be aware of dangerous early strategies. But now we're seeing a completely different mid-game, and we're seeing how those same early sorts of strategies are affecting it, right? We're seeing, oh yeah, that adjustment we saw that Roach guy do, he went Roach into Hydralisk. Maybe you would need to go Roach into Infestor to defend this front. And plus I chose this game just because it's cool to see the way that these Infestors work. And then we're going to do yet one more random game. And yeah, look, how are we spending the money? We're spending it on defense. We're going to work our way up here, and then we're going to expand here and get more defense here, and have this very defensive Infestor Broodlord army. Now, just watch how this works. This is so weird. Terran's even a little bit ahead on food. So yeah, so the Broodlords come in. It's all these Infestors. And what's weird is that we don't even really need that many upgrades at this point, to my knowledge. So here comes a Broodlord. So there's one fungal growth. Look at this. Entire army is immobilized. Ravens, you can neural parasite the Ravens. Oh yeah, and fungal growth actually can kill a unit. So you can just keep fungal growthing units until they die. Yeah, look, neural parasiting both these Ravens. Look, we have these auto turrets being thrown down that now have the blue color. And we have more fungal growth going down. This is really cool. Noticing that Zerg's money is getting a little high and that he hasn't expanded here, so there are ways to be even better at this strategy. And even with that little hiccup, look how much damage this is doing. This is like insane, right? So many auto turrets can be thrown down. There's even like neural parasiting. One of the Thors. And yeah, look at this fungal growth broodlord combination. There weren't even that many broodlords, right? Really cool strategy to see in action right there. So what have we learned? What have we seen? So I've kind of focused a lot on Zerg. And for this final game, we're going to be thinking a little bit about Terran, a little bit about Zerg as well. The goal with this is going to be to think about what are all the strategies that people need to worry about. So for Zerg, it's going to be a lot of the early game thing. It's going to be a lot of the it's going to be a lot of Hellion rushes, early pushes with Marines and Hellions, maybe even a Marine Marauder push. We're aware, even though we haven't seen it, of some drop strategies that could go on, of some air strategies that could go on. And Terran is going to need to be worrying about Zerglings and Banelings in the opening, how to deal with those. Needs to be aware of this hydralisk mid-game, but also needs to be aware of this completely different kind of strategy, which is totally driven around Infestors. So to make the analogy back to StarCraft 1, let's do Terran Berserk StarCraft 1, because that's what we're looking at right here. The Zerg in StarCraft 1 needs to worry about bunker rushes, proxy barracks, needs to worry about fast vultures running in there, needs to worry about fast drop, all in the opening. But, again, just like we were seeing here. And also in StarCraft 2, like I said that there's these two completely different mid-games we've seen, that's pretty similar to thinking of, oh, a Terran in StarCraft 1 could go Medic Marine or could go Mech. So in my opinion, the Hydralisks might not, or excuse me, this sort of Marine Marauder Medivac combination might need to be tweaked or adjusted into something different if we see a lot of Infestors going on. We might need to really crank up the aggression, make him waste fungal growth at his front. Hard to tell right now. And this game, I just note, is like an hour long. So we're not going to worry too much about the extreme stuff that goes on afterwards. You can all just find this game on the TeamLiquid.net StarCraft 2 official replay thread. So this is Jinro, aka Frozen Arbiters, or John. So look at them there, just having fun little conversations, because everyone in Europe is very friendly. And I have no idea how this game's going to turn out, but I want to be able to relate it back to everything I've seen. Okay, cool, a spawning pool opening. Probably not going to have to worry about any sort of bunker rushes right now. And he's walling in, and it looks like a refinery's going down. We could see some sort of Hellion push. We could see Reapers early on. By the way, I'm pretty much not reading this. I'm just going to be focusing on the other things because it's, you know, the interesting junk. Getting a very early orbital command. All right, nifty. The Zerg's getting an extractor early on. Still no expansion up. Getting an early queen. Looks pretty normal at this point. This is something that a lot of people favor. Oh, look, and there's the expansion going down. Yeah, against Terran, totally okay to get an early expansion going down. It's not like in Protoss versus Zerg where we need to worry about Zealot rushes or something like that. Almost killing the Overlord, but 173 hit points shy. So, you know, good effort, Marine. We're seeing a factory go down. Cool. Whew. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It wouldn't have been the first time that a player did a completely different strategy than something I'd predicted. Because I tried to, you know, look at some games and say, well, you know, Frozen Arbiter is a smart guy. He's probably doing some of the more standard stuff we're seeing other players do. And wouldn't be surprised if he just like went bunker rush all in and something nutty happened. But fortunately, he's doing something that's very similar to the other games that we've seen. So let's see how the Zerg's going to continue on with things. He has his queen ready. He's getting the hatch. Overlord's being placed in between here just to check this sort of stuff out. Oh, okay, we're getting a reactor up here. We're going to see some sort of Marine push. Maybe see the factory steal that reactor in a moment. And yeah, looks like the factory is going to be floating up here. Now, a question that someone might have is, well, wait a minute, why on earth is he building this factory way down here if he needs to float all the way up north? The answer could possibly be that he just doesn't want his opponent to see it, right? And it looks like he's going to see it right now. Look at the timing of that Zergling. The Zergling went up this ramp right as the factory landed. So what am I seeing right now? This is something that I want to write down in my StarCraft notebook. Right around the time when I'm at 27 food, or it might be a little different if I'm going 2 hatch, but if I open a 1 hatch pool at around 27 food, I need to send a Zergling up the ramp to see if he's going factory with that reactor. That's about the first time I'm going to be able to know definitively that this factory is making a bunch of Hellions early on. And that's a pretty specific thing to be able to see. So I really like to be able to look up the ramp. So if I go up here, and for instance, I still saw the barracks there, I might say something like, oh man, he's probably teching to Banshees or some other sort of air unit. And getting the tech lab, wow, this is so cool. It's like almost identical to the other games. Let's see how Zerg's going to deal with this. Oh, he's getting Zergling speed. Oh, that's really interesting. And I like this because remember how I was saying Zergling Baneling seems good early on to defend a whole bunch of stuff? Looks like this Zerg player might just rely on a whole bunch of Zerglings early on to hold off Hellion pushes. I don't see any spine crawlers going down, and he had plenty of food, plenty of time at which to do that because he saw the Hellions start when he was at 27 food. Yeah, it looks like the Queen's there, just going to help with the ramp block in action. But yeah, it looks like with Zergling speed, it's much harder to micro those Hellions. And especially considering the fact that Terran didn't have the Tech Lab add-on for the factory. So that means the Hellions don't have that super important upgrade for the flamethrower. It's going to take a lot more hits to take down those Zerglings. Still pushing with Hellions. Let's see how the Zerg deals with it. Huh, look at this. Still just more Zerglings. Seems like a completely reasonable idea. Some people might find that unusual to be getting a lot of Zerglings to stay alive. But if you think about it, it takes a lot of money to get the Roach Warren up and then to spend all that larva on the Roach Warren. If we're just getting a whole bunch of fast, quick, easy Zerglings and we're getting the metabolic boost upgrade for them, it might be more cost effective because we're saving money there, and we get that speed upgrade because we want to be getting Zerglings in the late game anyways. Cool, we're getting it out of the way now. Fantastic. Go Super Hellions. And meanwhile, we see Friendly Neighborhood Jinro just going ahead and expanding. Getting an add-on here for the barracks. Doesn't look like any Marauders have gone down quite yet. Keeping supply depots going, and oh, an armory. Oh god, I hope I see Thors. Oh, I want Thors. Still nothing done with this layer. Looks like he's instead going for mutilisks in the mid-game. Of all the games that we've done, I wouldn't be surprised if he went hydralisks. That would actually be ideal if he went hydralisks. Delicious tea. But, you know, this makes sense on this map. We have pretty far rush distances, but very short air distance. So I can put a ton of pressure on you with my mutilisks, while still expanding here and being able to come back in time to defend. But we can just as easily picture someone saying, yeah, I'm going to use Zerglings with speed to hold these Hellions, and then I'm going to be going hydralisks afterwards. Seems like a great transition. And meanwhile, we see Jinro. It looks like he's going to be going for Thors coming up here. I would hope Thors. It looks like the Thors are also going to hold off this Spire push. These mutas that might be popping out any second now. Are we going to see any Thors? Yeah, it's a Thor. Alright, getting the Thor. So this is really great. We're not going to be too worried about Hydra pushes at the front because we're going to have... Actually, let me back up a little bit. We're definitely not going to be worried about the Zergling pushes because the Hellions just eat through the Zerglings no problem. For air, we're definitely not going to be worried because these Thors are going to work through that air no problem. We're going to be a little bit worried about a Hydralisk push, but to be honest, Thors in combination with these Hellions are going to be super easy to defend that push with. So I'm liking this build by our friendly neighborhood Terran. Is able to deal with that different mid-game real well. Don't know how well it would deal with like fungal parasite and stuff like that. Or excuse me, fungal growth or neural parasite, you know, because then you can just mind control the Thors. But I'm just going to keep going just a little bit. Once again, we've been going for almost an hour, so I'm going to wrap this episode up in just a minute. We're not going to get to see the end of this game, because mainly it was about all these early game considerations that are just sort of hard to work past until you get your big plan up and running. That's the most important thing to do, is to make sure you know what your overarching plan is and how to get there without dying to any sort of these early openings. It doesn't have to be something too extreme or very specific. I mean, for me in Zerg vs. Terran, my overarching goal is Zergling Baneling into Hydralisks, into Ultra Zergling. That's it. That's really it. And I'm going to figure out when I can expand in there, given my money, where I'm feeling tight for cash and where I'm not. Zerg has all this extra money left over because he can, he's spending all his gas on these Mutilisks. And it gives him plenty and plenty of time to expand about the map. Hellions are actually really cool right now because they give all this map control to the Terran. He can continue making Hellions every now and again. Excuse me, and still have these Thors wandering around to deal with air, but also to look totally manly and sweet. And look at this great transitioning here. Use the barracks a little bit early on, but not really. And he's saying insane range. Yes, indeed, Thors have 10 range against air. And of course, remember once again that everyone from Europe is friendly. Looks like we're instead going to see a transition into the late game. What are some other things I'm thinking about mid-game? Well, mutilisks are doing a real good job of keeping this Terran player pinned back. These Thors, obviously are going to be a serious threat to the mutilisks, but I can keep Terran pinned back with a bunch of mutilisks and expand a bunch while going for ultra-zergling. Before I was going hydralisks into ultra-zergling. Now I'm starting to see that there's a lot of use going mutilisks into ultra-zergling, potentially. Actually, I'm just hoping I'm right. I'm hoping that there's that hive going to be coming. Could just be a whole bunch of infestors to deal with neuroparasite, which would honestly be like a super insane, just brilliant strategy by Zerg. To pretty much rely on mutilisks to force Terran to have too much air. And then, if he gets all this Thor stuff, like all this anti-air, you just, you simply neuroparasite it, and then they just kill each other. It's no problem at all. And we're just going to go 5 more minutes in this game, because I just want to see briefly what the late game is. Looks like this Terran's going to be playing a little bit passively here, but still just getting a lot of Thors, getting the upgrades. There's level 2 coming up, so now the Thors now do 50 damage per shot, 55 damage per shot against ground, and do a ridiculous amount against air, 20 damage against light air units. Look at these Hellions still having the opportunity to wander about and harass. Really loving this. Curious how the Terran is going to be able to deal with just increasingly massive Zerg air, because we've seen that there's a lot of issues with Terrans just able to hold that off. But you know what? Look at the setup that the Zerg was able to get with all these expansions. He has a lot of Zerglings here. It didn't look like Zerg could have died at any point. But we still want to think of all the ways that we possibly could have lost there. So, just examining a lot of these games and seeing the link between them, I'm thinking that maybe roaches might not be necessary after all. Maybe we could just hold it off just by getting Zerglings with speed and that sort of thing. So, I also like the fact that this opening by Terran, he could just get a few Thors to hold off the air, like maybe 1 or 2 if he scans for it. But if he sees Hydras, he can just get tanks, or he can just, I don't know how effective Thors are against mass hydralisks, but really, I mean, if you just get tanks with siege just still rip through hydralisks. So we just have time for like 3 or so questions. I'm going to go ahead and remute the chat and just select a handful of questions here. So let's see here. So, what are some other questions? People are asking, again, a lot of questions about general ideas of StarCraft. But I want to specifically think about just this one game. Or excuse me, just this matchup. So Doom Bacon says, what do you think about a 1-base Ling defense into Mutus for harass, into fast Brood Lords for the mid-game? So this plan, the one thing that I think is there are not a lot of expansions here. In StarCraft 2, we've seen tons of cool 1-base plays by lots of players. But the danger comes when one of those 1-basing strategies doesn't kill the opponent, and the 1-basing person will be watching will sort of crumble and lose. So what I would say is, if you're getting Brood Lords that quickly, so you make Mutalisks to force them to get anti-air, and you're getting Brood Lords just to do a little bit of extra damage, I would be trying to think of ways to push the Terran back so far that I could take 2 expansions for that mid-game stage. And then have something else after that. Because anytime you get a unit really fast on 1 base, it shouldn't be just to begin massing up with that unit. It should instead have some purpose that lets you do something else. So for instance, in Protoss vs. Terran, if a Protoss player Colossus rushes, it's probably because he sees his opponent going for some sort of early Marauder Marine thing. So he needs that Colossus to be able to combat that while getting up an expansion. There's a purpose for that Colossus. It's not that he's just going to get Colossi and then just go, and just all in Colossi. That's a little bit weak. So with this Brood Lord strategy, seems reasonable. I mean, if we're on one base, it's going to be very hard to get in our face and do anything early on. If we get those mutilisks very quickly, as we saw in the game I lost, it does put quite a bit of pressure on the Terran player, especially if it's going for some sort of expansion. And the Broodlords are obviously just good in general. But how do you do the next step? What is the next step? And that's really the only issue I would have with that one. So let's see here. Let's just take 2 more questions. Oh yeah, there was one thing I was going to say briefly. Day 9 Daily number 82 is uploaded, but its audio off syncs a little bit, so I might just slap on like a 30-second video before then saying, I'm so sorry, you'll be watching it with audio off sync. If you have any opinions on it, just post it on the thread on Team Liquid in my comment section for this stream. So here's a question by Clans, which is just one of my favorite names ever. When you did a Hellion rush against the Zerg player on Steps of War, you sent your first 2 Hellions to go straight for his base. Is that always a good idea to send your tech to your opponent ASAP, or should you save up units, 4 to 6 Hellions? The Terran in the last game did the same thing. So that is a real interesting question. What do I think about that one? So I don't think that there's any sort of general rule over whether you should just be sending your fancy units right away to the opponent. It depends on what the goal of that unit is. So for instance, a lot of Terran players, as we've been seeing, especially those who saw Moon's style of Terran vs. Zerg, a lot of players were seeing get a Thor really fast against Zerg. But that cute tech unit is just hangs out in the base to make sure he doesn't die. But of course, you're asking a little bit more about the rush ideas. The only reason, well, not the only reason, but a reason why I would like waiting for 4 to 6 Hellions instead of rushing with just 2 is because you'd hit a critical number where you can blow through Zerglings in 1 hit. So that way, if you have like 10 Zerglings on the ramp, your Hellions just march up, just all 6 blow through, and you instantly get up. You can clearly see why that would be more effective than sending 2 at a time, 2 at a time, 2 at a time. But when I'm getting my Hellions so quickly, I'm trying to pretty much beat him to roaches, and I'm trying to harass his expansion. I'm trying to force him to make more spine crawlers, or just lose more Zerglings than he wants to. I don't really care if he makes a lot of Zerglings. It doesn't scare me. You know, it's not like, oh man, what if I lose to a Zergling counterattack? In reality, I want to force him to make Zerglings way more than he wants to. I want him to damage that Expo as much as I can before he has some unit, like a Roach, that can just easily fend off the Hellions. So that's why I'm rushing with it. If you're going to do any sort of delay attack, to relate it back to the games we've seen, you need to worry about, like, Roaches at the front to defend. How many Hellions do you need to be able to bust through a Roach rush? Because there's kind of like this period where if you rush really fast, you beat the Roaches. But if you wait a really long time, you can run over the Roaches and get into his base. But if you're too close to that midpoint, he's just going to defeat you really easily with those Roaches. So that's all my ramblings I have on that. Let's just take one more question. You know what? I'm going to take this question from Kadred because I have serious conviction with my answer. When working on transitions while playing a specific race, is it wise to do the time, mineral, gas math ahead of time, or just wing it and keep trying? It is always better to have a plan that you are trying to execute than it is to wing it. But it's important not to spend time doing stuff that's so excessive that it eats into the playing. So, for instance, the plan that I would have going into that Games of Steps of War, I would have a pretty detailed plan. I would say, let's open barracks, and then I'm going to get a fast factory, and then the barracks is going to build a reactor, and I'm going to swap those buildings' locations, right? I'm just going to do a little switcheroo, and then the barracks is going to start going Marauders, and I'm going to Hellion rush him, just 2 Hellions at a time. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to expand, and I'm going to get 3 barracks. I'm going to stop making Hellions. I'm going to steal that reactor back for a barracks. I'm going to get 2 barracks with tech labs if I see Roaches, so I can get a whole bunch of Marauders. As I'm expanding, I'm sort of building up. I'm eventually going to get a starport for Ravens. I'm going to push out about the time my first Raven appears, and I'm going to have a big Medic Marine army. Oh yeah, I'm also going to get a +1 upgrade earlier on to see, just to boost my army in general. And my Hellions are going to have poke around the map and see all the cool stuff that they can find, prevent expansions, etc., etc. Pretty damn detailed plan. But I haven't said anything about the food timings of any of that. That's actually something I'm going to discover in the game. That's the sort of math that if you did beforehand, it would be really hard to know how it feels. Because if you needed to make a big adjustment, like say, oh yeah, I need to wait much longer at that engineering bay. You don't want to sit down and spend 20 more minutes doing math when you could just load up and play another game and work on all the other timings as well. So absolutely, 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 absolutely have a really well thought out plan ahead of time. And given what we've seen right now, have a plan for dealing with roaches early on, all sorts of weird rushes for Zerg, but then some sort of hydralisk transition into the mid-game for Zerg. Maybe I need to think about getting tanks with my plan. I don't know. Just make sure you plan it out ahead of time. The only case in which I would say wing it is if you see something you've never seen before. Again, as Terran, let's say I'm just going Marine Marauder, Hellion, and I'm going to be getting a Raven after a little while, but then I see that my opponent goes mass Infestor, like in that King Hillbilly game. If I were in that game, I would have no clue what to do as Terran. But you know what? I would just keep trying, right? I would keep trying in the game to wing it, to think of something on the fly, and I'd just go with it. And then afterwards, I'd sit down for a long time, and I'd massage my chin, and what can I possibly do? And then I would probably call up Tristan and say, hey, Tristan, can you do this thing that King Hillbilly raped me with? Because I really need to practice against it. And I would have a whole bunch of ideas planned out ahead of time. So you know what? That is going to wrap up Day 9 Daily number 83. Please post your opinions about the 82 game, whether I should do a whole bunch of extra work to try to fix the audio, or whether anyone really minds a 2-second off sync. But that is going to wrap things up. I'm only doing an episode tonight, tomorrow, and on Tuesday, because I'm going to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. But then after that is spring break, so get eagerly excited to watch for all sorts of fancy, schmancy stuff to come, potentially even some game streaming going on there. So yeah, that is going to wrap things up. And once again, get a StarCraft notebook and record all your thoughts and fun little thingeringgies that you want to try. And keep playing StarCraft because it's awesome. See you later, guys.